What's up, y'all? It's Zach with Living Corporate. And if you didn't know, because every week there's a new listener, right? Every day there's someone discovering Living Corporate. So I'm going to just let everybody know. And then for those who've been rocking with us for a while, I'm going to remind y'all too. Living Corporate is a digital media network, and we exist to center and amplify Black and brown people at work. That's what we do. Okay. We are the voice of the people. We're not really here to promote corporations or protect them or be some type of corporate reputational laundering service. Like, that's not what we do, right? When we have brands on to talk about Black and brown people at work, when we have executives, activists, elected officials, public servants, influencers, artists, etc., we have any of these types of people on, we're going to be centering and amplifying Black and brown experiences. And if that brand happens to do that work and really be authentic in that space, then we will speak to them. And you can best believe that when they come on this stage, on this platform, we're not pulling any punches. We're having real conversations. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is what Living Corporate is all about. I'm so excited about where Living Corporate is. I'm excited about this episode you're about to hear, this conversation you're about to hear. And, I just want you to know that I love you. I appreciate you. Make sure that you follow Living Corporate everywhere we exist. You know what I'm saying? Just Google Living Corporate. I ain't about to rattle off all the social media handles. You know what I mean? Like, if you just go on Google or whatever search engine you use, because that's not an ad either. Whatever you use, Ask Jeeves, Bing, Yahoo, I don't know, Microsoft Edge, whatever you're using, just type in Living Corporate and we're going to pop up, right? Now, look, what you're listening to is Real Talk Tuesdays. You're listening to one show that's part of a larger network, right? And so if you check us out, you look at our website, living-corporate.com, you'll see that we actually have a network of shows, right? All focused on centering and amplifying Black and brown folks at work with different lenses, right? So shout out to the entire team. As our shows continue to come, you will hear about it, but make sure you plug in so you can just stay in tune. That way you don't have to try to catch up. You can just be caught up as you're catching on. You know what I'm saying? Now, with that being said, I'm excited about this conversation you're about to hear. I want you to pay attention and make sure that you click the links in the show notes to learn more about what we're doing and where we're going. I'll see you soon. Sandra, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
You know what?
It's the end of the summer and we're all sort of like, why? But we're here.
Listen,
okay.
This summer has been so hot. So hot. I don't know what's going on in Houston, but it's hot everywhere. So, but you got to be thankful. We on this side of the ground, so you count your blessings where you can. Now, look, can you briefly share with our listeners your journey into the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what inspired you to just embark in this work? Because it's not easy work.
It's not easy work, Zach, and I have to tell you, my story starts on a negative side, unfortunately. I was overlooked for a promotion that really should have been mine. And in the midst of that conversation and negotiations, the CEO spent a lot of time investigating the situation. What was it about? Why was it that way? And he ended up offering me 3 opportunities. And of those opportunities, one was directing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I said to him, you know what? He had asked me this years before if I would do it, and I said no. This time I said, I'm taking this, and I'm taking it because what happened to me should not happen to anybody else. And I am convinced that there's a lot that has to be done in order to help people in their mindset and to change the direction of the organization. And by the way, I thought the organization was fair and equitable, but when it occurred in my face, as it did, I said, no, something's not right. And so that's the start of my journey. Now, interesting enough, that CEO is the CEO that I work for today.
Interesting. So, I want to ask a couple at least one follow up there. So when you had this conversation about this was not equitable. This was not fair. I mean, you had this dialogue with this person who is now your CEO. How receptive was he of that discussion? Like, and I asked that because, and then also, and my part B is, and how did you share that feedback? Because I'll tell you, in my career, in my experiences, so often there's this level of just immediate defensiveness and resistance to any sort of accountability at all. So, like, how did that happen? And what was that exchange like?
So what I need to build on here is that I had a relationship with him. So it wasn't brand new. It wasn't like I was this stranger walking in his office or engaging him. He engaged me all the time. When he joined the organization I was with, I said to him, you need to have people from the mailroom to the boardroom that you can call on, because everybody is not going to tell you the truth. What he relied on with me in our relationship, I would tell him the truth, and it would be sometimes raw. And he respected that because I just wasn't going to beat around the bush with him. It was really his first foray into being a CEO. And so there was a trust level and a relationship that was there. So when he spent time with me on this, and he was not told that this was taking place. So that was another piece that was really surprising to him. And so there was all of that happening. So the most important thing I would say to people is having relationships in the organization is really, really important.
You know, I have to say also, like, there is this, like Sandra, based on what you're saying, there is like this meta narrative though that you're validating of Black women constantly being like the salve while also being harmed. Like constantly hey, this happened to me, and now I'm gonna be a part of the solution while also being like on the receiving end of harm. Like, how do you? I'm not gonna ask, is it exhausting? That's an obvious question. That's a silly question. What I am curious about is like, how do you handle the fatigue of that, and like what guidance or advice would you give to like younger or newer Black women in their careers, constantly having to like fix systems that they aren't really accountable for?
So the one piece that I talk about is self-care. You're not Superwoman, and you are not God, and so just know that there will be good days and they will absolutely be bad days. You will not always have friends. You will have frenemies. You'll have people who are trying to figure you out. I actually approach my work like Columbo. It can drive people crazy because I don't come full right away. I need to understand who you are and whose you are and why you're here. And what is your plan? And I deal with leaders that way. Like, I need to understand folks before we get down to the business. It does become exhausting, and I do take time off, and I will tell people that you must take time off. You have to exhale. You really do have to exhale, because then you got to get your filters clean too, so that you're reading things properly. Because the truth is, everything that comes to you is not discrimination. People fake this out. And if you want to talk about something that pisses me off, it's when you fake it, that somebody discriminated against you. Because there's too many other true stories, and then you come and try to build one up, and it's not true. So I don't like to waste time there. Let's deal with the real stuff.
Absolutely. You talked about kind of like your foray into this work. I appreciate your candor. You know, what drew you to Nielsen specifically? And then also, what's keeping you there now?
So previous to Nielsen, I'd been at my former job for 14 years. That was a holding company. Coming to Nielsen was one company, and also the CEO. I trust him. And I would not have sort of jumped at this point, but because of him. I do trust him. He has, over the years, grown and matured a lot more regarding DEI. And He knows that this is a baseline, just a mere baseline for Nielsen. Nielsen's about representation and the whole audience. So it's crucial. And I really the other thing is my mother worked for Nielsen. Okay. It was my mother's last job. So I said, this is going to be my last job. But the difference is she was in the call center and I'm in the C-suite. So I think it's a nice story.
Wow. That's awesome. So, it's interesting. You talk about like your journey and if that might be the pivotal moment. I am curious though, if there are any other moments in your experience that maybe shifted your perspective or really added to your lexicon, your strategy, your skill set as it pertains to like just this space, this work of diversity, equity, inclusion. Like, or was there something that was like, wow, that's really an unlock for me, or wow, I really need to look at this differently. I really thought I had this figured out, but this is challenging me to look at this in a different way.
Yeah. Well, there are two things. One was understanding other groups, other cultures, that what they're going through versus what me as a Black person is going through. And I will say that, as Black people, we stay in our lane of a thought process of we're the worst, it's the worst for us. There are people and cultures that are getting beat up too. And we have to understand that, and we have to be more thoughtful about it. Then there's the gender piece that when I've had some incidents where women have come to me who are white, who have talked about their story. And it was socioeconomic differences. And so that status in the white culture it's serious. And so you really do have to think about how people experience life. And so what I have pivoted to is, I call it high touch. You really do have to hear people, see people, and understand people for the life journey they're taking.
There's so much to be said there, right? As it pertains to, like, to your point, like, I'll say, like, let's say, like, when white folks say, if I talk to, like, let's say I talk to white folks and say, I grew up poor too. And it's like, I grew up from the bottom. It's like, you grew up from the bottom, but it wasn't the Black bottom though. It wasn't the same, right? But like, here's the thing, like, something doesn't have to be the same for it to have merit and value. And certainly it doesn't have to be the same for you to pause, empathize, and reflect and appreciate that unique experience. And then also, to your point, I receive and agree that like there are other experiences in the world that are complex, that are challenged, that are oppressed, and that are dangerous and life-threatening. And it's imperative, that everyone recognize the relative access and privilege that they have, right? Because everybody has it.
Yes. And listen, for Blacks, speaking generationally now, the access that they have is nothing like I had. Mm-hmm. It's a wider berth of, oh my goodness. And then, so for me in my generation, I'm asking the question, you need to step in and step up. What I am getting is a different kind of approach, which is not bad, but it's also, think about your historical piece. You got to keep that history there, because there's still layers of people who are there and they are using it. And we have now come full circle, finding ourselves in a place that is really, really not good for us.
To that end, talking to my grandfather is 83. And we were talking about, I was talking about living corporate. And he said, that's your job? And I said, yeah, that's my job. I built this. He was like, you be careful, talking about all that stuff. He said, nah, he's like, things are bad. He's like, now look, he's like, things are rough. He's like, I'm gonna tell you though. He's like, back when I was your age, I didn't have no job. I didn't have no jobs doing the stuff you're doing. That, especially at the time, Sandra, I think I was consulting still. So I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers at the time. So he was just impressed at the idea of like, wow, like you able to have a job where you can work from home or where you can like travel all around and like make all, like, he's like, I'm telling you, like, it's completely different, right? And so I have to slow down also and just listen, to that end. I'm curious, like, to your point about generational, like, intersectionality or in the generational lens. As you look at like millennials, I'm not going to say Gen Zers right now because they just kind of coming out of college and they really new. But like, as you look at like millennial leaders and even like younger Gen X leaders, what are things that you say, look, this is different and it's pushing me in a good way versus, hey, I genuinely disagree with this. Like, are there things that you can say, you know what, this makes me uncomfortable, but I can tell this is where we need to go, versus like, hey, I don't think that this is right.
Right. So, your discomfort and my discomfort are two different things. Okay. Because I have matured to know that, you know what, sometimes you have to, I told you Columbo, right? So sometimes you have to sit in the room and check it out and then go back to it. I find that my millennials at times want to jump right in it. No, hold up. Because you have to figure out why they said what they said or why they did what they did, because there's something behind it. It's not just done. There's something behind it. And so I want people to be more patient and figure things out and have conversation. The other thing I told you about relationships, this is serious. Because I have young people say, I don't feel like teaching them. Well, let me be clear. If you don't, who will? And I'm asking for patience on this. I really am with my millennials. Be patient. If they say, they have a microaggression moment with you, stop for a second and say, is this worth it? Is this the moment? Now, I've actually told my son that, like, if it's worth it, go for it. But if it's not, now he had a few build up, and when he got to the third, I said, no thirds. We're not doing thirds. You need to go in on that. You need to go in on it. I said, and take it to HR. I said, because at this point, I don't have patience myself hearing it. So you have to measure though, when. And I spoke to a gentleman the other day who is more my contemporary, but he was in a situation where he's among mostly white women and he's a black man. And I said, I know what you have to measure. And I said, I think you've done it fine for now, but I said, you think you let her go too far. He was speaking about someone who was a bully. And I said, no, got to stop that in its tracks. And you can stop it in concert with HR and say your piece so that it is witnessed. And that's another thing. Our people don't use HR enough. And even if HR is not performing at a high level of intelligence, diversity intelligence, you have to teach them too. Because I said to him, so you need to explain to them, you are a black male among mostly white females. I said, stop when you say it. And because they're going to look at you like, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I did that. And they said, you're talking about discrimination. He said, no, I'm actually not talking about discrimination. I'm talking about a bully who happens to be a white female. And being a white female has her privilege. And me as a black male manager, I have a position that I have to hold. Because otherwise, I'm going to be the one. And I said, you have to actually point that out to them. Because some of them don't know. It doesn't occur to them.
It doesn't even register. To that point, Sandra, like I'm gonna tell you, like, so I'm a millennial, 33, Virgo season also, by the way, it's here, y'all. Like, okay, we outside. Here's the thing, right? Is to your point, like I came up in human resources, change management, org design. So I was. What you're describing, I was that. And you're absolutely right that there has to be really almost like some courses, I would even think, like some professional development on how to effectively use HR. I do believe that like historically marginalized people, particularly black folks, right? Not to paint with a super broad brush, we're either taught to like overly depend on HR or treat HR like they're the ops. And it's like, look, they're a tool, like they sit in a function. And irrespective of how they behave, your job is to manage them by how you engage and document, right? And so I've been in situations where I was the only person, or I'd be leading a team of all white women, and a bunch of things would just start happening. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to document this conversation. I'm going to record this conversation. And then I'm going to sit down with HR and say, it's so eerie that you said that. Cause I remember I had a kind of situation where I said, hey, I'm the only only man, and I'm the only black man, and I am younger than all these people, and I'm 6'2", 285. So, and they're saying things like, wow, I didn't know that you knew that word, or your vocabulary is very interesting, or I don't know if you're always thinking things through. You don't seem like a critical thinker to me, or then on the next day, this seems a little too strategic, or like, so it's like all this stuff, right? And so then and to your point, it's this hammer nail. They're waiting for you to say, I was discriminated against. Like, I'm not even saying I'm being discriminated against. I'm telling you that there's a culture and pattern here of behavior that is compounded by my race, compounded by my identity. And so you're absolutely right. Like, there's this work that has to happen and that is done to really upward manage HR and educate them. And if you put yourself in a position, going back to the other thing you said about, we don't want to teach people. If you're not going to take on some level of leadership and education for your environment, then you're going to then be subject to your environment. Like, the education is power.
Now, Zach, I really do appreciate that idea of courses regarding how to manage up and around HR, because HR is for the company. It's protecting the company. And I tell this to everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. HR does represent the company. And so you need to think long and hard before you start engaging them when it becomes a legal thing. You need your own outside legal counsel. That's what you need. So you go, you present the issue, and that same situation you just talked about, I had that at another company. He was also 6'2". He said, I go to lunch with them. I listen to the shower planning and the wedding planning. And after a while, he got tired of it. And so he went to HR to have that kind of conversation. What happened when he went to HR was that they, meaning the manager, decided he had a problem in retaining information and he wasn't doing his job well. All of that came out of him saying, you know what, I don't want to be put in a position where I'm sort of the bad person because I don't want to go to those lunches or to the outside activities. I literally had to go with him to HR to explain to them, I want you to look at this completely and fully for what it is.
Right. I mean, so that's so, Sandra, I'm so mind blown in this moment because, to your point, in my experience, this was only like 3 years ago, all these issues about my competence were only raised after I made a note of, hey, I don't really like some of these experiences I'm having with these people, like the resistance to my leadership, right? Like, and we have the largest case study of resistance to black leadership, and frankly, black and brown leadership by the majority, in Barack Obama. And this is not a political podcast, something like that. I'm not even saying this is not even about being pro-Obama. It's just the level of vitriol that was aimed towards him was so like beyond the pale relative to other presidents. It was just like, what is going on? And so like, I remember I said, hey, look, there's just some things that are being said about me and said to me, or just kind of like the way that people are showing up that's bringing me pause. All of a sudden it was, hey, actually while you submitted this investigation, we did an investigation on you, and here's all the things we found out about you. It's like, what is that about?
And that is absolutely how that story ends. Because you have an intellect sometimes that is beyond what their expectations were, and they're trying to figure you out. And they can't. And that becomes, a resistance thing. And the vitriol that goes with it is like, what? You woke up this morning and you are angry at me for what? I used a big word you didn't understand.
It's so it was so bizarre. And if it wasn't, frankly, for people like you, Sandra, in my life at that time, to help me realize that, hey, no, Zach, you're not out of line here. What you're experiencing is ridiculous. Then who's to say where I might have lost myself. So look, we went off on a phenomenal tangent.
I know we did. I know we did.
So I think all of this really goes back, flows well into my next question. So look, DI positions, they are notoriously understaffed and underfunded. In light of this, what advice would you give to both executive leaders and DEI practitioners?
So as a practitioner going into an organization, I tell people this all the time. You know, when we have that flood of interviews and wanting to hire DEI leaders and CDOs and blah, blah, blah. Well, why do they want you? Do they know why they want you? Because this is the beginning of really ruining the DEI position itself. Because if you go in not knowing, you're not actually going to be successful anyway. You need to know what kind of support you have. You need to know what the mindset of the leadership is about. You need to understand from the ground up what their business is about. What are the resources they're going to actually provide? That means people, and it means the money, the finances for the strategy that you want to build, or the programs that you want to, provide for the organization. But you also want to know, in the organization, will you have ambassadors? Will there be people who will actually help you be successful? And does the leadership understand that it's not just you? Because if you go in and they say, well, no, she or he have it, they're the CDO. No. I don't wake up every day with it just on my back. The success of what I do in terms of a strategy is always, from my perspective, to help the bottom line. It has always been that, because that's the language that they best are suited for. What is it going to do and create an environment where people are really productive? And see, that particular piece is hard to measure. We also have to talk about data and what the data means in driving a strategy that actually is going to be effective and make change happen.
You know what? Like, that's a phenomenal. First of all, thank you for your. And the first place I want to say is, I recall I've been at a few different consulting firms, but so I was at another shop, and I remember I was rolling out this program called LIT. Now, this is before LIT as a slang was very tired. Now, this was some years ago when it was very fresh, Sandra. So I was cool, trust me. So LIT stood for Leaning In Together. And it was all about, like, okay, we're going to create these real talk sessions. This is actually what inspired Living Corporate. We're going to create these real talk sessions where we actually bring in white executives to talk to historically marginalized, younger, new professionals in the organization. And it's going to then create points of connection. We're then going to have, like, coaching sessions, and it's going to create, like, actual career pathing and some level of engagement and potential areas of sponsorship. Upward sponsorship. And so I remember when I was presenting this to my department, to my group, and one of the senior partners who had been there for a long time, probably like 25 years. She said, well, where is insert CDO? She's like, is this her program or is this your program? And why are you doing this? If we already have a CDO, like, what is this? And I said, so I'm working with the CDO. She is the sponsor of this program, and we're working together. But I said, but this work of talent enablement and engagement and sponsorship and mentorship, this is a collective endeavor. This is not a single person point of failure, that if it doesn't come from this person, it's not a thing. It needs to be blessed by them, and they're going to empower and drive. But it's not right for you to just, and it also highlights, like a gap in your, and this part I didn't say, of course, but but I was thinking about it highlights a gap in your thinking and approach that you say, well, anything that is diversity, if I don't have to touch that, all of that is on this person over in the corner somewhere.
That's right. Mm-hmm. No, you have to have all hands in. It has to be. Because otherwise people won't pay attention to it because it's not a part of their remit, right? And so we make ours accountable. You got to be accountable. And that's the other piece when we were talking before. I left that out. Accountability is crucial. It's crucial to anybody. If your leader says to you, this is a part of what we do on a daily basis, you are likely to pay attention to it. It's a part of your review. What did you do in order to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in the organization? How did you participate? Those are questions that we ask.
You know, I to that point, you talked about data. Like, you know, Nielsen provides its clients with valuable insights into consumer behavior and marketing information by collecting data that measures what consumers watch and what they buy, right? So that is Nielsen, right? With this in mind, how do you leverage data to shape DEI strategy at Nielsen?
So coming into Nielsen, I was not data driven. I really wasn't. I did just the basics from the former job. Nielsen really put this at the top of the list, and rightfully so. So certainly started out on the representation side, and what does that look like, and where are we missing? Where are the gaps? We really need to understand where we are in order to decide where we're going to go. And we based our representation on the census, which is another thing. I hadn't paid attention like that. And I found it to be quite interesting because you learn so much and you never stop learning. You never stop learning. And so we identified there were about 4 areas that we needed to really pay attention to. Got it. Okay. But from there's also creating activities and programs, et cetera, data from that. How involved are our people in these activities? How often do they take place? What is the return is what it is on these activities. So we started with the 11 BRGs. We're now at 14 BRGs, business resource groups. And some things you can't measure is that people say, I feel freer now. They feel freer because we have put it in front of them. We have told our people what the numbers are. We're transparent with that. And that creates that feeling that, you know what, these people are serious about this. And so you can go forward by just being open with the numbers, telling them where we want to go. If we miss, we miss, and they know that. What causes the miss? And by the way, I tell people of these different communities, you have to help here. So when we're recruiting, please don't say we can't find people. You need to give us references, it's referrals rather, and we collectively need to do something about it. So those things are, and of course, retention. We have very good numbers from the programs that we have launched on retaining those people in the organization. They feel good about what we do.
So first of all, like, you know, I'm a bit of a nerd. So Sandra, I'm gonna be honest with you. I really got into, I started, like I told you, I cut my teeth really like as an HR manager, then got into like org design and training, then got into full change management, org transformation, and then started getting into DEI. And the thing about it is, what I really started getting excited about, and I've been excited about this for some years now, is it's the pulling of the HRIS data and analysis. So using Python and R to then like organize and cleanse data, then using like a Power BI or a Tableau to then to then create dashboards, like a different intersection of lenses, right? So like you say, okay, to your point about representation, it's not just male, female. It's like how many white Gen X women are in the engineering department who also are in the Southwest region, and then comparing them to Black Gen X women in the engineering department in the Northeast region, and then looking at time to hire, time at level, retention, benefits usage, performance. It's that level of like granularity, like in data analytics that really help to inform, to your point, like what are we actually doing? And then the part though that gets me really excited is you take all of that quantitative HRIS data and then you layer on top of that sentiment data, right? So if I can sit back and say, okay, baby boomer black men in the IT department are all those things I said, and they also feel like this. And then you take all that data and then you leverage it against your your engagement strategy. So to your point with your BRGs, you have all this data now. So then when you sit back and you measure and you engage them and you see how they feel, especially if you time that survey or you time that point of, I'm going to say that time of measurement, that point of measurement against when an event happened, and then you can start comparing and contrasting, right? And so I love the fact that you said, like, you started off, like, when you came in, you weren't data, but the fact that you've adapted and you're growing in that. I'm excited about the future of this work. I think that, especially to your point about this position being ruined, I really think that the wheat and the chaff are going to separate by how effective folks are able to stand behind, like, and analyze, engage, analyze, and strategize against their data. Because the folks that aren't able to do that, Sandra, they're going to get cut. Because if I can't show tangible, provable, documented point of improve, then they're going to be like, well, what are we doing? This is a waste of money, right? Even if it isn't, because you don't have any evidence. You know what I mean?
And the other piece that from my former job and still now, I always keep the emails that come that talk about how they feel about the organization. Because when you have that, and we do have, we have pulse surveys for sure. And what you were saying about being that granular, I do think it really is important because it's a part of the story. And here we have a lot of people who've been here 10, 15, and 20 years. And there is definitely a different mindset from those who've come in the last 5 years. So you need to be able, when you do this pulse surveys, be able to pull that out and say, so, okay, legacy of thinking, blah, 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 as opposed to new people who have a sort of different and sometimes fresh perspective that we need to be paying attention to. Then we need to put the two together in a room. Let's talk about this. These things, for my generation, is really interesting because I am the detective. I am going underneath. I got to figure this stuff out. Why? And when you don't give people that opportunity to see the story, then they start to wonder, as you say, so why are we spending money on this?
Right. And when you, and I think to your point about like needing to pull those things out, because if you don't apply an intersectional lens and you're not as granular as possible in your analysis, it leaves room for assumptions. And right. And so then what happens is, so if I sit back and let's say you make let's say you run your analysis, but it's not intersectional or it's not really granular. Well, then if people make assumptions and Sandra, those assumptions are wrong, well, damn, you was better off not doing the analysis at all, because you're walking away with a bunch of wrong assumptions that are going to create harm, right? So, look, all that being said, I think as we talk about data, the future of this work, and technology, AI is, everybody using AI now, right? AI is everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn talking about use AI to help you write a post now. And there's AI in everything that we're doing. Living Corporate uses AI. AI is here. I don't believe it's going anywhere. What questions or concerns do you have regarding the use of artificial intelligence and AI tools in the work of DEI?
Okay, so AI is like the first time it came to me in terms of knowledge. I said, so wait a minute, are we talking about robots? Like, what is this? Are they deciding what we're going to do? It's like Star Wars or something. It's like, what is this? So that said, I consider it a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool. My concern about the tool itself is who is doing this, who is behind the details, as you say, the mindset that is sitting there translating this into this robot. Do you know how I think as a Black woman? Do you know how this Indian woman thinks? Do you know this? Because that is the part where it becomes, ooh, I don't know. I had heard a story about judges using AI for comparison to sentencing. Uh, that is crazy to me. Like, so, historically, if they are putting in information that is normally put in, then we're doomed.
Right.
We are doomed.
We're going to continue the disparate impact, or intentional impact, is going to continue to widen, right? The dissonance in sentencing is going to continue to widen. To that end, right? I think about AI, and we actually recently had Danny Guillory, who's the head of people at Glassdoor. We were talking about artificial intelligence, and so you and I are probably more on the cautious side, and Danny, I got love for him. He's more on like the optimistic side. I think the AI has, to your point, I think it has value, and it should be used. I think it just needs to be used carefully, and it needs to be treated like a college intern. So just like you wouldn't have a college intern manage some part of your business or make any real decisions, it's, hey, I'm going to use this and I'm going to heavily supervise everything that comes out of this thing, because it might be smart, but you an intern. You ain't worked nowhere before. Not trying to be ageist. You just got here, right? So this whole idea though of I think some of it, Sandra, is my concern is that people see this. Some people are seeing AI as a way to accelerate or cheapen labor and eliminate positions. So we say, we're just going to go use this thing instead of this person. And it's like, hey, this person comes not just, they might be expensive when you talk about their salary and their benefits. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. But guess what? You're mitigating a lot of risk, because they're going to also come with experience and cultural context and historical context that this AI just don't have, right? And so I'm curious to see, and look, they keep on silencing Black women who have been raising the alarm about AI and the intersection of using AI in ethical ways. Dr. Timnit Gebru is obviously the foremost name in that space, but I'm curious, and I'm going to be really paying attention. Liver Corporate's going to be paying attention to how these tools are used, because I think left to their own devices, no pun intended, it could be problematic.
Oh no, definitely could be problematic. I mean, because there is implicit bias in it and unwanted discrimination that can take place. We have to be on top of it. So when you say talking about eliminating jobs, actually you might need to add some jobs to make sure that we're on top of it. Because what could come out of it are lawsuits you don't want to have to deal with.
100%. Now, to that end about lawsuits, and we're in the season, and it's before I say this, I think there's a lot of folks who are, I'm gonna say more so my age, right? So a lot of millennials, maybe even some older Gen Zers who are like, DEI is under attack, and it's all about to be over, and this, we've never seen anything like this before. I think the reality is, if you look at American history, what we're calling DEI today has gone by other names over the past 30, 40 years. There's been cycles of progression and then retraction, right? So I'm not so chronologically arrogant to say this is the first and only time this has happened. I'm curious, but I will say for my little lifespan, especially my professional lifespan, I have not seen this level of just outright attack in this domain, this space. I'm curious, what 3 points of advice would you give to executives who are trying to figure out, okay, I need to retain my talent. I still want to attract talent. Maybe even some of them, maybe Sandra, maybe some of them want to actually do the right thing. Who knows? But they don't know what to do in light of political talking heads and all these other things. Like, what would you tell them in this moment?
One of the things I would be real clear on is you still have a bottom line you have to meet. And if you do something that is going to really affect that bottom line, now think about what you've done thus far. If you're going to do something based on this silliness that's going on, you're going to do harm to that bottom line. You're going to do harm to your brand. Your brand is at stake right now. And people don't believe that it can be affected. It can be affected. We've seen it. Think long and hard. You think about the value actually that it brings. In fact, the educators have talked about this, given SCOTUS and what they did on affirmative action. They want a diverse group of students in their environment. You learn from that. You understand the world better when you have a diverse group of people in the classroom. That is not going to change. People, the sky is falling, it's not falling. We are repurposing. We're putting a different kind of roof on to protect what has been going on in the increasing learning of who we are as people. There are so many things that can be done. Look at your language that you're using, because, they're going to keep coming for this. Look at the language that you're using in terms of the programming and the idea of, so I had one recruit by design. Okay, I didn't say what it was, but let's recruit by design. As you said, with all of the different aspects of what we have in terms of generation, race, we can do all of that. And nobody can stop us from that. So the bottom line, the branding, understanding your audiences, those are very crucial now. We know that the U.S. in particular is split. We at least assume that they're split. You can't always go by the polls anymore. But understanding what people are feeling. As a leader, you better know what your people are feeling. Do not go in that room, close the door, and all of you sit around the table and think that you know it all. You do not. Go outside that room and have a high-touch experience with your people. We have Let's Chat, Let's Connect. The EC, the Executive Committee, are the members who go and have conversations, roundtable conversations with no more than 15, 20 people all across the globe. Be in touch so you are not surprised. You got to know. And if you're a leader, you'd want to know what your people are thinking in terms of the work they're doing and the organization as a whole. How are we rated? Those things are important. And I will say to you, I think that CEOs in particular, they may appear to be, these people know what they're doing. Yeah, they know what they're doing. I would say to the people inside of the organizations, keep their seats warm. Keep their seats warm, because there will always be a competition for talent, and talent will go where they feel they're going to grow. You grow in diverse environments. In homogenous environments, you stay the same.
Sandra, I'm going to tell you something. You've been dropping bars this entire conversation. Truly phenomenal guest. I appreciate the time that you made to be on Living Corporate. We consider you a friend of the show. And we look forward to having you back soon.
Well, I surely enjoyed our conversation because you're like my son and my godson, both are in their 30s. And I say, you all keep me young and keep me going. So happy to do it.
Love it. We will talk to you soon. And we're back. Yo, I want to thank our guests. I want to say much love to the entire Living Corporate team. Thank you for you. That's right. You listen to this right now, driving in your car or on the subway or, you know what I'm saying, working out, or just listening late at night while you know what I'm saying, doing some work or something. Thank you for being a part of our Living Corporate community. I appreciate you. Make sure, if you haven't already, that you create a login on living-corporate.com where you can actually get all this content pushed to you based on the types of things that you want to engage and listen to. Make sure you actually go to living-corporate.com for jobs and career advice and all types of just dope content that we got on there and that we're publishing every single day. All right. Until next time, this has been Zach. I'll catch you soon. Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.